Hi folks, welcome to Set Apart Homestead. This is Travis here at the Prepared Homestead. Wow. Just every day, isn't it? It's like we're living in the twilight zone. Every day you wake up and you wonder, is the end now? And while that may be slightly exaggerated, sometimes I think it's probably not too far off from the truth. Several months ago, I believe it was last year, I didn't go back and check to see the exact date, but I made a video talking about how I felt that we were in at that time, and had been for quite a while, in a type of cold civil war. And I think that is kind of self-explanatory, that, you know, we were this type of civil war between whatever you want to call it, good and evil, left and right, freedom, control, but that it was more of a cold war. You know, there wasn't as much, there wasn't the violence, there wasn't the overtness of the war. I think that is starting to change, and it's pretty obvious that the amount of violence is starting to have an uptick. And I'm not just talking about riots, because to be honest, most of the rioting has kind of calmed down, at least compared to what it was 2 weeks ago. But since then, it's been little pockets that we are seeing of violence. And then, of course, it's also happening overseas. This is not just an American thing. A lot of people view this as like a Republican versus Democrat, or just an American patriots against the left progressives in America. But it's really a very global thing. We're seeing large amounts of rioting and violent acts happening all over the world. London, France, Germany, Australia, and several other countries, down in Brazil, Hong Kong. And some of them are because of Black Lives Matter, some of it's Antifa, some of it's just, people protesting their own government. But we're seeing this more and more. And here in the United States, at least what I have been noticing over the last couple of weeks, not only was there the protests, but we're also seeing just these little incidents of violence against people, things that the news media is not covering. If you want to see this kind of stuff, or if you're interested in what I'm talking about, you can get on websites like Twitter, in which I had never used Twitter before. I always thought it was the silliest thing. I still think it's kind of silly, at least to post things. But I did sign up for a Twitter account, and I follow certain people on there, and you can get a lot of news or a lot of information that is obviously not broadcast in any kind of major news source. And that's one source of it. There's all sorts of these violent acts of little old ladies being kind of shoved to the ground by a minority. There are women being beaten, just random beating. We just watched one just a few hours ago of these guys attacking a woman, what looked to be a convenience store, and they actually shoved her in a freezer. There's other ones where they've just beaten. There's one that happened in Texas, I believe, down by Houston. Guys walking out of a convenience store and then just got jumped, and they just beat all over him, kicked him. A young girl on a subway. I mean, it's just over and over and over again. Statues are being torn down. Still looting is going on. Property destruction is still going on. We're seeing, more of this where they're blocking traffic, and we're starting to see vehicles, people plow through them and run them over because they're being attacked while they're in their vehicle, and they feel they have no other way to save themselves but to drive through the protest and the rioters. The point is that we're seeing a lot of this more and more. And I'm starting to get the feeling that this cold civil war is not so cold anymore. And for those of us, my listeners and myself, that live out like this, near the, in the small town communities and out in the countryside, we are a little bit more isolated from it. We don't see that. I don't see it when I'm out here. And it's not because there are no minorities. There's minorities out here, not a lot, but you still see them. But, you don't see any problems because of that. Crime rates are real low comparison to bigger cities. And, you can move about and not usually have to worry about that sort of thing, as opposed to being in the big cities. And now there's got to be, for those folks that live in the big city, surely they are worried more and more about just going out. Are they going to get attacked even more? Is the odds of them being attacked more than they've ever been before? And so we're seeing this kind of stuff happen. And along with the violence, we're seeing the media and we're seeing those on the left, instead of condemning this violence, they're condemning the people that end up being the victims, or they're not talking about it at all, or they're encouraging the rioting as a way of self-expression. And more, we're seeing battle lines being drawn. We're seeing this type of hatred coming out of people that was never really seen before, not on such an open public level, of demands that certain people of that are white, that they have to give so much money, or they have to do something to make up for the fact that there's a possibility that 150, 200 years ago maybe an ancestor of theirs owned a slave. It's going on and on and on, and it's getting worse. And most people still believe that this is all about civil rights. And folks, it's not. It's not about civil rights. That is simply the vehicle that the left, the vehicle that those in power, those that want to rule, those that do rule, it is simply the vehicle of the moment that they are using to gain their control, to stomp out freedom and those that support freedom, those that fight for it, and those that will die for it. And they feel and they know, because they're not dumb, that the time is right for this, that people have become so there's become so much just complacent and so gullible, and that they will just completely believe whatever that they're being told. The media, the internet, has done a really good job of doing that. And so here we are, in a world that seems to be just falling apart everywhere we turn. And you may be asking yourself, what do you do? That's conversations come up quite a bit here at the Homestead. What do we do? Number one, we make sure that we're prepared as best as we can to live out here for as long as we can, and survive if we have to, because things could get to that point. It may not, but it could. But secondly, people like you and I, we have to start standing up. And our parents and our grandparents may have believed that going to the voting booth was the only way to stand up against evil. And I'm not telling you not to go vote. I'm not going to tell you to go vote. But what I am going to tell you is just voting anymore isn't enough. You have to be willing to stand up. A video I made a few days ago, I talked about how once upon a time, good conservative people sat around thinking that there was no possible way that our government would okay the murder of millions of people, millions of little babies. And they sat around and they allowed it to happen. And they thought that there was no way, over and over again, that our government would allow guns that were protected in our Second Amendment to be taken away from people, or to be greatly restricted. And over again, good people have sat around and allowed this to happen. The only thing for evil to triumph is that good men do nothing. And there's good men and women out there. Still, I believe we are the majority. And we have to stop sitting down. We have to stop putting our heads in the sand. We have to stop kowtowing to the viciousness and the evilness out there that makes, tries to put us down as that we are, either bigoted, or we're racist, or we're hateful, or we don't care about the weak or the innocent because of how we believe, when in fact none of that is true. In fact, it's just the opposite. The way you and I believe, the way you and I think, it does support the weak. It does support the minority. It does support the ones that need help the most. So what I'm saying basically is, folks, you need to start getting yourselves prepared. And I know many of you do. That's probably why you watch this channel, and that's why you watch other channels here on YouTube that are like mine, because you're getting yourself prepared every day. But I have a feeling that while we may see ups and downs, and we may see little cooling off periods here and there, this battle, this type of civil war, is not going to go away for a while. And I don't want to come across as a warmongering type person, or someone that's trying to get people all riled up for something that they shouldn't, or that I'm just supporting violence, because that's not the case at all. But I will say this is something that my wife and I were talking about. I think, this is just my opinion, but I think we are beyond the point of fixing this problem through a peaceful and legal and political means. I think we are at a point, or have crossed that line, that the only way this fight is going to be won is through violent means. And that's a scary thing. It's been over 150 years since this country has seen a civil war. And I think we're going to see it again. We're either going to see a civil war, or we're going to just see the left completely take over because everyone else sat around and let it happen. I think that's pretty much the only way, the only two outcomes that we're going to have from this is that, a civil war, or they just win because we did nothing. So folks, get yourselves ready, be prepared. And for those of you that live in the city, I'm telling you, you guys need to be even more prepared. If you're able to be armed when you go places, please be armed, because the amount of violence that's happening in these cities, it's getting bad in some of them. And I know that not all of them are that way, but even in mid-sized cities that are, not too far from here, we're seeing a little bit of more violence increase. So, watch your back. Keep yourself prepared. Keep yourself armed, if at all possible. And start, realizing that we are most likely at war right now. And I say that so carefully, and I thought long and hard before even seeing that on this video, because, I don't want to come across as one of these that's just trying to scare people and incite violence just to get views, because that's not it at all. But unless the last few conservatives that are in politics can actually do something and really get this stopped, which, as much as many conservatives like the president, I really don't see the things happening right now, see anything that he's doing that will really stop this, next to just getting himself reelected. I think that's where we're headed. I think we're headed at some point in our future. And you know what? I'd just rather soon let it happen and get it over with. Because the longer it waits, the more powerful they are. The longer it waits, the more it will go on to the next generation, which, my generation and my parents' generation, we are the strongest, I think, that's still alive. There's the greatest generation, and there's no offense to you folks of the greatest generation, but, you have your physical, age and stuff that's kind of catching up with you. And so when I'm talking about an actual fighting, people like myself in my age group and my parents' age group are probably some of the last ones in great numbers that are capable. So I'd just soon get it over with. Because at this point, I would rather it just happen now so that my children don't have to fight that war. And don't think that it's just going to be between us and these crazy, kooky, Antifa, soy-eating, latte-drinking, trans identity by whatever that they are. If this starts happening and continues to happen, I assure you, people from around the world, communists, the left, the powers that actually rule, they're funding this already, and they're going to be sending their people. So it's not just going to be a war between us and the lunatics that you see in places like Seattle. But folks, I could be wrong, and I hope that I am. I really hope that I am. But I don't think we're in a cold civil war anymore. I think we're seeing the early skirmishes, is what I think. And it's starting to pick up. And more in the last few days, you see people like you and I that have just fed up, that they've been attacked. There was one just a few days ago. He was being beaten with skateboards by these protests and rioters. And he was armed, and he shot one of them. And of course, now they're, muddying his name and calling him this horrible aggressor when the video clearly shows they had him on the ground beating him with skateboards. And he was able to break away and defend himself. The news media is not backing him, and most likely the local district attorney won't back him either. So when this goes down, I think we're going to be on our own. And so, folks, I hope you're prayed up, and I hope you're trained up, and I hope you're ready. Because unless I'm wrong, and I hope that I am, I do not believe we are in a cold civil war any longer. Let me know what you think. I encourage you to disagree with me if that's what you want, because, I would rather be wrong about this than be right on this one. It's mostly just a gut feeling. Folks, stay safe out there. I certainly don't make these videos for the money. I do it because, honestly, I do care. And I hope to wake people up, and I hope to encourage you. And so this is one of those videos. I am hoping to encourage you to get yourselves prepared as much as possible. And if it's reaching out to people, making connections, building groups, whatever it is, you have got to start doing that. Maybe you've been a little leery of doing that in the past, or you didn't know how. You've got to start, breaking the ice and doing this kind of thing, getting yourself ready, because I think Reckoning Day is coming, and I think it's coming really soon. All right, folks. Stay safe, and I'll catch you in the next video.